What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of CMA Podcast. How is everybody doing? Back once again with the Burt Locker host, Mr. Burt Green. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well. I'm now 2 beers in. Feeling pretty good. Feeling loose.
There you go, man.
Like
absolutely. 2 beers in myself. This is take two.
Feeling like I've warmed up. You know?
There you go, man.
Ready
up.
for some torpedo shots.
Don't steal my line, motherfucker. That was for me. God damn it. So in full disclosure, people, this is take 2. There was technical issues for take 1. I fucked up. I promised not to do it again. And here we are, Burt. It is an absolute pleasure to talk to you for the 3rd time on this podcast. Welcome back.
It is good to be here. Well, 4th time.
All right. Okay, you're going to hit me with that. Well, this is number 4 then. But no one else will hear the 3rd one then, if that's the case.
It's a shame. I can't believe how often you were agreeing that Dana White is a saint and it is quite frankly overpaying all of the fighters.
There you go. So we'll segue into that. I love Dana White, apparently. And we're going to talk today about money, man. Fighter pay. The controversial topic of the UFC, polarizing this week because of what's happening with the heavyweight fight happening tonight. Burt, is recorded on a Tuesday. Tonight is Saturday, so it's the fight night. Do you have any advice for your future self?
My future self, do the opposite of my bets, because generally speaking, my bets are pretty terrible lately. Except from on the NFL. The NFL, you should definitely go with me on those because I was a few hundred up this weekend, so I was pretty happy with that. But
I love hearing your terrible bets, man. It's hilarious.
Yeah, they are terrible. I mean, like, that was so bad. Yeah. Charles Rosa, my knockout. What was I thinking? What was I thinking?
I don't know, man.
I don't call them good bets.
Well, I mean, I assumed Ronda Rousey would beat Holly Holm in Australia. I assumed that Cyborg would beat Amanda Nunes. I assumed that what was the other one? The big shocker, the Venezuela Vixen. She beat Amanda Nunes.
Beat Amanda Nunes. Yeah, that was crazy.
I was on my podcast with Evo, and we were so confident in the outcome.
Congratulations on your black belt, Evo. Cheers.
There you go, man. Fucking black belt.
That shows it on my viewer, at the very least.
There you go. But with fighting, man, it's who shows up on the night, and you just, like you say, terrible bets. I say educated guess. You know what I mean?
It is it always is. Yeah, it's pointless trying to predict exactly what's going to happen because because the thing is, the reason my bets are terrible is that I often like, because I try and go all out and I pick the method and everything like that, and I only bet in £1 increments because they are that terrible. I know they're terrible. I know there's a very small chance, but keep the odds high, keep those stakes low, and keep those bets terrible. That's my motto. Yeah,
and gamble responsibly too. I don't gamble for that reason.
Yeah. Do you not gamble at all? No.
I don't gamble at all, dude. I am. Well, I don't know how I would be now, but when I first learned how to play Texas Hold'em, like I have a terrible poker face. My eyes just fucking light up when I got a good hand.
Or do they?
Oh no, they do, dude. I'm terrible, and for some reason, I love saying all in, and like 10 minutes later, I'm buying back in. So that was about I want to say 10 years ago. I'm pretty good with my money now, but before, dude, I had a fight and I was paid $500 and I won the fight, and in the whole say again,
great wage,
terrible wage,
underpaid, solid start wage.
Underpaid. That's what I was.
I think that's fair.
I signed the contract and I got paid accordingly. So that segues to why we're talking tonight. But I want to say that back then, 2011, I was terrible with my money. I got paid $500 cash. I won the fight and I spent that entire cash bulk in the hotel bar that night. I just got very, very greedy. I started feeling my greed, and I just started. After that, after 1 or 2 tongue looseners, I started buying everybody drinks and champagne and you name it. It was a fantastic night. Fun was had by all.
Ric Flair for a second, didn't you?
Woo!
Apparently that's what he used to do. He used to just like Go
Oh
up to
yeah.
the bar, order Nagasaki bombs for everybody in the bar, literally everybody in the bar.
There you
And he'd
go,
go
man.
in there, he'd throw a few $1,000s down, just be like, yeah, drinks for everybody. And he would be partying all night. He
Yeah.
embodied, watch the 30 for 30 on Ric Flair. It's unreal.
I heard it's
So good.
insane. I've seen
Yeah.
clips. I haven't seen. I don't know where to get that because I just googled it and like there's clips available on YouTube. But if you can send
So
me
yeah,
that full episode,
you talk about being bad with money. I'm terrible with money because I just buy any streaming service that comes available. I can't be bothered I can't be bothered with, like, I know that you can download them all. I get it. I know that. Do you know what I mean? But I can't be bothered. I'm not well versed enough. I don't have enough VPNs or whatever it is to stop like my computer from being like buggered up. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah,
just I can't be bothered with that. I'll pay the $5.99 for Disney, like, and that's where I watched it incidentally because they own ESPN, and obviously all the ESPN 30 for 30s are on Disney Street. The Disney streaming platform is really good actually. I mean, there's so much more on there than you think. You think, oh, Disney, I don't really watch Disney. It's like, yeah, you do. You just don't know
yeah. They aggressively purchased all around them like 2 or 3 years ago, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Insane. Yeah.
They own FX now, so Always Sunny is going to be on Disney Plus very soon.
Yeah.
And yeah, fair play to them. No,
Absolutely, man.
It's a buyer's market.
There you go, man. Capitalists speaking.
And they will set the terms. That's a lovely segue.
A lovely segue right there. Torpedo number one. Here we go.
Here we go.
I want to talk about fighter pay. Now, on take one, I didn't know where we stood with each other. I didn't know whether this was going to be us agreeing a lot or disagreeing a lot, debating, shouting down the mic to each other. Who knows? But I think that it is a very interesting topic. I saw some of your clips maybe 2 weeks ago. Like you talk about fighter pay, you talk about like the general structure, people getting upset about fighter pay and not paying for subscriptions or not paying for the pay-per-views. Or
that's something that I find very funny.
You did have a wonderful point about the US fans complaining about the UK fans and the structure being completely different. And what you made the point about was the fact that it's at normal time over there, Saturday evening, like 8 o'clock. And over here, we got to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning on our own in the front room with our blankets and our breakfast.
I'm not paying $70 for that.
Yeah, it's impossible. But if you've got a gym full of guys, you get 20 guys over to your apartment. 20 guys over to the apartment sounds like a wonderful night.
Nice.
But, everyone chips in $5-10. Like, you could end up having a great night, get some beer and pizza and stuff.
Exactly. And honestly, I would rather do that. I would rather it was a normal time and it was $75. Like, honestly, because I would go to a bar to watch it. Like, 'cause I love watching stuff like that in a bar. It's just way better. You get some chicken wings, get a few beers, and you can actually enjoy the fights and watch them live. Whereas watching fights live over here is a nightmare. Even if you've managed to stay up for the main event, honestly, gun to your head, are you enjoying it? No.
Well, now I am, and I'll tell you why. I got 2 kids that don't let me sleep on a Sunday morning. So when we wake up, dude, it's breakfast time. Yeah, it's breakfast. Yeah. So I get breakfast ready. I got my laptop here. I may purchase the pay-per-view. I can neither confirm nor deny details of how I watch or see the actual pay-per-view, but I do watch it live. That's for damn sure. But yeah, fighter pay. It is a topic for discussion. A topic for discussion twice this evening, according to my bullshit editing techniques here. So yeah, let's look at it again and just revert what we were discussing. Entry-level fighters coming in off wherever they came from, get their first contract with UFC. They sign the terms and they got to fight. Sometimes they don't get the time to, it's a last minute call at a higher weight class or a lower weight class. So the first fight is always a very stressful time. But you got these terms, these 5-6 page terms, small print. You just got to sign and agree, because if you don't, someone else is going to sign and agree and get in the UFC. Entry level is, are we saying $10,000?
I mean, officially, I think it's 10 and 10. But as like I said, I do monitor the purses quite closely because it is a subject that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And as much as I do say some crazy shit sometimes.
That's why I love watching your show, bro.
as much as I say some crazy shit sometimes, like no, I do think it is a subject that's worth looking into properly, i.e., examining both sides of it. It's like Bill Burr had a brilliant bit about feminism, and the problem is a lot of feminists are literally it's always like what the man is doing wrong, right? But you cannot fix a problem by only examining one half of it. And that's true. And
You're opening up
feminism. It is for fighter pay. Honestly, you have to look at both sides of it because it's not always black and white. There are a lot more moving parts and components.
You got to sift through the debris.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they don't have idiots writing those contracts, right? Yeah, are those initial contracts probably favorable to the UFC? Yeah, you betcha. Yeah, and you know what? They should be. Otherwise, those contract lawyers are not doing their job, and I guarantee they get paid a lot more than most fighters.
There you go, man. Hunter Campbell is the biggest lawyer in the UFC right now. He's the guy at the forefront.
Yeah. I was going to say Hunter. He's a big, Thing is, he's like, he is top dog at what he does, and so he should be getting paid those amounts. And it's like, people have a go at Dana White for negotiating deals that are beneficial to the UFC. Yeah, he fucking better be. You seen what he earns every year?
Yep.
He better be getting some favorable deals for the UFC, because if he's not doing his job, and he wouldn't be where he is, honestly. Mm-hmm. There's a reason Dana White is where he is, because that's one that, like, a lot of people would like to chastise Dana White, saying that he robs from the fighters, he doesn't pay a fair wage, and blah 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 blah. However, those same people, they will never give him props for where it counts, because as much as people, because again, we looked at Mark Coleman earlier. He's been running into some medical issues. I don't know enough about Mark Coleman's individual kind of situation, but again, that I'll go more back into that in a second, but I want to stay on my original point, which is people always talk about fighters pave the way for other fighters. What about Dana White? He laid a few slabs, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. True. Absolutely.
And I don't hear that ever, really. You don't see that in any of these toxic forums that I go into, they're not real people. I shouldn't even entertain it. I know. But no one ever says that. Without Dana White, the UFC and MMA would not be where it is. Like I'd go as far as to say Dana White is probably one of the most important figures in the world of MMA in the last 20 years. Kind of, and okay. That's probably not a popular opinion, but I don't think it's even an opinion. I think it's kind of like, well, without Dana White, Dana White is the best promoter in the world. Like, I really think that. I think if he'd have gone into pure boxing promotion, he'd probably be making more than he is now. But he decided to try and do something even more difficult, which is take a sport that is in its absolute infancy and partner with some people who have some capital behind them to try and turn this infant, tiny sport that nobody's heard of, that is going on in bingo halls and the back of like pool places, and try and turn it into a multinational, legitimate sport that is now on ESPN. Even in the Spike TV days, when it was on Bravo in the UK, right? Because people looked at it as human cockfighting at some points, right? The notion that would ever be on a legitimate platform like ESPN was laughable. Yeah, true. But they did it. And that is in a large part to Dana White and to some of the deals that he entered into, because we can talk about that again. So is the whole Reebok deal and the Venom deal. A large part of them being able to get onto Fox and onto ESPN is because of those deals.
Agreed. Absolutely. And the counteract to that would be when you take away the leverage from the bigger fighters, like the guys who are earning top dollar because they've got the big following, they're in the UFC, they're a known head in the game. You know, when you've got a Reebok deal, or now Venom, where you were making prior to that deal, let's say $800,000 a fight, which was Vitor Belfort's contract with his sponsors in Brazil.
Fuck that steroid loving Jesus freak. Fuck him and his wonderful traps. You know,
I'd like to thank you, Jesus. You know,
Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for the gay Jesus. Sorry, that was
Yoel Romero.
that was one of my favorite, because I could see Joe Rogan just like, did he just say what? Oh, you don't forget Jesus.
Yeah, everyone started booing.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was tough, man. That was a horrible language barrier. He actually had him on Joe Rogan's podcast to clarify that up.
With Joe Diaz, yeah.
Oh, that was a tough one to watch.
It's still a tough watch, yeah.
But yeah, when you're before the Reebok deal earning like $800,000 a fight, let's say over the course of 3 fights a year, and now you're fighting for $20,000 for just sponsorship, it's a huge dent in your overall purse, you know, whatever about your fight contract.
My counter to that, because earlier on I did, like, full disclosure, second time we discussed this, but
yeah, let's push the fact that I fucked up again. There you go.
No, I'm just saying that, but it's just that because I've actually thought of something else that is a counter torpedo to your torpedo.
Okay.
Right. Because I would counter, because, like, as I said, like, at the end of the day, whilst it hurts the big guys. It does hurt the big guys in terms of sponsorship, but it does help out the little guys. Like Michael Bisping has said several times, like on his podcast, because I listen to it every week. I know that he said it, but I don't want to quote him. But he did say something along the lines of, you know, when he was starting out, it was very difficult to get hold of sponsorship, X, Y, and Z, and you had to kind of make those deals kind of yourself or get your managers to do it and whatever, right? But those entry-level fighters, they're now getting something for the sponsorship. So it does help them out. It helps that they'd be getting more from that Venom deal than they perhaps would from the deals they would broker themselves, because they're not a name yet. Mm-hmm. But the guys that are the big guys, they still have that name, right? And they're still going to be able to get sponsors, everything like that, just not on Fight Night. So I would counter that it hurts the big guys less than it helps the little guys.
It hurts the big guys less than it. All right, that's a valid point. I get it. Yeah. If you're, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not going to dispute that. You have torpedoed my torpedo.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Sorry, I had a lot of time to think about it. You've only got yourself to blame.
It is my fault, man. I for anyone listening right now, I threw a torpedo at Burt and he crumbled. Let's be honest.
I crumbled.
You almost like disconnected the call here. There was floods of tears. You were yelling floods. Profanity.
I've been drying my eyes since.
But no, what you're saying is right. It is true. And I guess with such a big organization, with everyone getting paid what they're getting paid, do you know what Bruce Buffer and Joe Rogan, for example, make on Fight Night?
Isn't Bruce Buffer like 50 grand a night?
50 grand a night. There you go. Everyone's getting paid. Everyone's off the breadline, except the fighters.
However, again, counter torpedo. Joe Rogan did the first events for free. He didn't get paid. Right? He gets paid now.
Yeah.
But and again, Bruce Buffer. How many, like, they have other ring announcers, right? Mm-hmm. How many Bruce Buffers are there in this world?
True. Yep.
Bruce Buffer,
I can see that.
And the thing is like that dude blew out his ACL once whilst jumping, and like that dude puts his own body on the line. It's not just the fighters.
Yeah, was that during the Buffer 360?
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah, I remember that.
But Bruce Buffer, again, he got in there early, and he wasn't making 50 grand a time when it was a small fledgling. He believed in the promotion.
Yeah.
And it's same with Joe Rogan. He kind of believed in the promotion. Same with Dana White. Same with all those guys that got in on the ground level. And yeah, unfortunately, the entry level fighters today were not around in that time. Do you know what I mean? It's their time to pay their dues, because like I said, there's been a lot of people paving the way. Dana White, former fighters, all those guys. Like even Bruce Buffer and Joe Rogan are a part of the reason that the UFC is where it is. I still miss Goldie, for God's sake. What a lovely guy.
Yeah,
Met him in Manchester once. He's a lovely, lovely bloke. Really great.
Very, very cool. I met him in Dublin. So cool, dude.
He is, yeah.
He was in a rush and he took time to just stand there and shake my hand.
Same.
Great.
It was so nice of him. I couldn't believe it. I was just, and I literally caught him the last event he ever called.
Ah, yeah.
The last event he ever called was Michael Bisping defending his belt against Dan Henderson in Manchester. Wow. And he never called an event after that.
Amazing.
Because he was fired the next day.
Jesus, yeah. That was controversial in and of itself. But yeah, no, what you're saying
I don't think that was up to the UFC, though. I think that was a WME.
Yeah, WME, absolutely. They did have a rocky relationship, I guess, with the amount of money he was making and the controversial extracurricular activities that he was partaking in.
The hookers?
There was no hookers. I love the way everybody goes to hookers when I talk about that.
Oh, I just don't think that's that controversial. It's like what a man does in his spare time. That's up to him, isn't it?
I didn't say there was anything wrong with hookers, bro. I don't know where we're going with this, but we can talk about it off air if you want.
I think they're like the fourth emergency service. Honestly, they provide a service with a smile.
There you go.
It's all fine. Sorry, we're going off track here.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that no one's hearing me here at home. But yeah, no, again, with everything that went down with that situation, you're right in what you're saying when you call in WME to the circumstances. They have made a lot of adjustments. We previously discussed the termination of Chuck Liddell and Matt Hughes. Yeah. That was a big one because prior to that, we were talking about the what happens to fighters after they retire or, when their contract expires and they want to keep fighting. Things like that. When it comes to people like Chuck Liddell, who've paved the way, who didn't necessarily make a lot in fight purse. We talk, I guess, about Mark Coleman, who experienced a lot of health issues after, where the UFC did not take care of any bills. The caveat to that is, these are independent contractors, not employees. They don't enjoy benefits like health insurance, except for injury sustained on fight night in the octagon. So I could, go into the fight with an ankle injury, tear my ACL during the fight, but I'm only really covered for the ACL. I'm going to have to pay everything else out of pocket if there's any additional work to be done. Is it on the UFC to take care of their fighters after they retire or after they're post-contract? I don't think it is.
No.
I don't think it is either. But
no, because again, I would ask, like there are a lot of sports out there. Like I'd ask what boxing promotions take care of their fighters after they retire? Do you know what I mean? There's like the whole point of getting into a sport like that is that that you're retiring before 40 because that thing is. It's a high risk, potentially low reward business that you get into. It's the hurt business. It's not the let's bake each other cakes and have a good time business. Although you do have a good time if you get into because these are some of the other perks that often get ignored. They look at the base salary and they're just like, okay, yeah, it's like what these guys are making. Like, let's say you fulfill all of your fights in that year, and let's say that it's 10,000 a fight. Like to show 10,000 to win, and you lose all your fights that year, right? So you've made yourself 30 grand. It's in the low tax bracket, so actually you're not getting taxed as much on that. They all take place in Nevada. But for that year, you are being paid to get better at fighting. You get to train every day. You get to you don't have a day job to go to, right? I'm not being funny. If you're okay with your money, you can get by on 30 grand, like easy. I do it. You know what I mean? And I pay for a gym membership outside of it. That's not tax deductible. That's another thing that people don't often like. All those trainers, all that shit is tax deductible. They can get a reduction on that. Their money managers should be looking into that. But end of the day, you're being paid to do something that you love, and that is a privilege in itself, right? To do something that you love for your main living, so that you don't have to do anything else. That is not a situation that a lot of people are in, right? And it's just not. And in order and the risks that you're taking to kind of achieve that are big, because you're putting a big strain on your body. You're getting in there and you're fighting people for a living. But like, honestly, is fighting something that you're going to get into if you don't love it? Do you know what I mean? I don't care what Anthony Johnson says. He loves fighting. He can shut the fuck up. I'm not being funny, but he does. Like, he can say, "Oh, I'm just not. No, I was a great athlete. I just never loved fighting." Bullshit. You wouldn't have got into it if you didn't love it at some level, right? And the way you get treated in Vegas, if you're a fighter, you are the man. You are a fighter on the UFC. Do you know what I mean? Like, people love you. You're not going to pay for a meal all week. Like, all that shit. Like, it's like, because people are like, "Oh yeah, but you can make more if you worked at this, like, at Starbucks or whatever." It's like, yeah, you could make more at Starbucks, working 50 hours a week behind a coffee counter. No one gives a fuck about you. Do you know what I mean? You're trying to get there, because it's not, the only perk is not the money, right? It's just, like, there are a lot of other things that go into it. You're chasing your dream. What price tag do you put on your dreams? It's like a lot of people take the price.
And then to devil's advocate on that, you work your way up through the ranks and you make all this money. Hopefully, if you're a good negotiator, you go through the lower level MMA organizations. Let's say you work through Cage Warriors. You went through Bellator, IPFL, 1FC. And then your goal when you started was to be a UFC fighter, right? Yeah. You get to the UFC and you start on that base level. It could be a little bit higher. The incentive to go and sign that contract, you'd attract so many more people to be just so much better with a more attractive, like, I don't want to say base level or minimum wage, but it's pretty close to minimum wage. And they say that minimum wage is just another way of your boss saying, "I want to pay you less," but the government said no.
Well, again, I would say that isn't an issue with the UFC. That's an issue with capitalism in general, because essentially I agree with you. Mm-hmm. I think that fighters should be paid more. And do you know why? Because I think people should be paid more. I don't think there should be a minimum wage. Yeah. Like, a minimum wage is not, like, there should be a minimum that people can earn in order to get by. But I'll tell you what, that is not minimum wage. Like, minimum wage is not enough to get by. Not in this day and age. Not when. I mean, I'm talking about like the UK in particular, but salaries have stagnated against inflation for decades now. Decades. Yeah. And people wonder why people can't afford to pay their bills. And that is not a problem like exclusive to fighters. That is just a problem kind of for everybody. And what I would say, counterpoint to the kind of to the base level salary in the UFC, is that let's keep it in MMA here, right? People talk about how the UFC are robbing their fighters, they don't pay enough, whatever. What's the base level in Bellator? Like, it's about 10,000 less than the UFC. I'll tell you that now because I've checked, right?
Base level for Bellator.
Base level for Bellator, their early prelim fighters are making 2,000 a fight.
Wow.
If they're lucky.
Okay.
Right? And people talk about the UFC. People talk about the UFC robbing their fighters. You know what I mean? They're owned by Viacom. Any idea how big Viacom is?
Yeah,
Jesus.
They're sitting on 750 billion or whatever the fuck it is.
The UFC are robbing people.
But the devil's advocate on that is they've got the freedom of sponsorship. So they've got the freedom to say, okay, this is what I'm making, but now it's on me. I've got the freedom to go to, let's say we go to the Burt locker and say, "Hey, Burt, I got this fight at the weekend, right? I'm going to have your logo on my shorts, on my t-shirt when I walk out. And let's say 2 million people are going to watch on pay-per-view on Saturday night."
Can I just ask you, what promotion do you fight for again?
Bellator. Google it.
Bellator. Where are you on the card?
I'm third fight, Burt.
Third fight? On what? On the main card?
On the main card, Burt.
2 million people ain't watching that.
2 million people are going to watch it. They're going to watch it.
Off what? I'd like to see your viewing figures, please.
Please find attached to your next email the analytics from the previous pay-per-view. They don't even do pay-per-views. They do free TV.
Yeah.
So they're all going to watch it.
But I'm talking about the base level guys. They're going to be like real early on in the cut. And I do see what you're saying, but my counterpoint to that is how many sponsors are falling over themselves to get sponsored by those guys early on. Because this is, again, where the Venom deal helps early prelim fighters. If early prelim UFC fighters who have no name are struggling to get sponsors, which some of them do, a lot of them do, if they're struggling, I can tell you this for free, like early prelim Bellator fighters are going to be struggling even more. So I don't think that any kind of sponsorship makes up for the disparity of £10,000 a fight, $10,000 a fight rather, right? I think that honestly, if Bellator could raise their initial rates rather than, because Bellator do pay some fighters really well. It's about a handful and it is at the expense of all the other fighters down the card. And it is. And I think it's actually disgusting. I really don't like how they operate it. Because they overpay their main event washed up, not washed up, they are washed up. They're washed up like over the hill, like UFC. No one would give a fuck about half of their roster if they weren't in the UFC. Because that's another thing that winds me up. Like, people talk about, like, the UFC never did nothing for me. Like, I was nearly broke when I left the UFC. Hey, Paige, right? How many people would give a fuck about you fighting in bare knuckle boxing if you weren't in the UFC? Do you want to tell me that? I'll give you a clue. It ain't many. It ain't many. So the UFC clearly has a use, don't they? You use them to further yourself. So look, they do have a use. At the end of the day, look, do some fighters get paid like badly? Maybe. I don't know. The crux of it is I don't know because I'm not like a UFC accountant. I don't know because people compare the Bellator percentages with the UFC percentages, but actually when you look at the production of Bellator and the UFC, they're apples and oranges. Even Chael Sonnen said, well, the thing is that as much as I like Bellator as well, I've been good with both promotions. People talk about those percentages, but the UFC, they employ like 400 odd people just in editing. That's just editing. Right, or whatever it is. Like, I can't remember what the actual quote was, but my main point is when you look at and you can see it in the production as well. You can see it. That money really works because it's a polished, like, production. Whereas you look at Bellator and it's like, you can see that they kind of skimp on those kind of areas. And that's the importance in the UFC. Like, that's what they do so well. That's what they do better than any other MMA organization is growth. They invest in growth. I don't know exactly what number they invest in growth, what percentage they invest in growth, but it is significant because right now the UFC and MMA are still a tiny, tiny sport. They're a very young sport. And in order to grow the sport, they need to invest more money in that. And I'm not a UFC accountant, but I would say that it's far more likely that a more likely scenario than Dana White robbing all of his fighters, which is something I see all the time online. I know they're not real people, so I shouldn't entertain it, but that is a quote you see quite a lot, isn't it? Oh, Dana White's just robbing all these fighters, and But I'd say a far more likely scenario is that they have very clever money men saying, look, this is what you can afford to pay your fighters. This is what you can afford to put into growth. This is what you can afford to do this. This is how much you can afford to pay your cameramen. This is how much you can afford to put into advertising. This is how much you can afford to put into your shows like the Embeddeds and everything like that. I'm very certain it is all rigorously calculated. And I would say it's much more likely that fighters are paid accordingly than poorly.
That's a very fair point. I can't argue with that. Absolutely. You torpedoed me out of the fucking ocean, bro. No, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. I guess on face value, the trolls on social media, the comment section. Here's the thing about being a podcaster. You gotta dive into the comments because we gotta know what people are saying, I tried so much to stay away from it. But when I do an episode, I gotta know what people are saying. Comments. No, I'm not talking about our ones because I love your comments. I'm like, oh, Burt, my boy. But it's like when Ariel Hawani posts, like, dude, I spent 15 minutes scrolling through because it's horrible to watch. Like some uneducated fool, probably some teenager who thinks Conor McGregor is like Brock Lesnar. But it's just a case of seeing what people are saying and them not understanding the structure. You've got to, like, this is why I asked you on this episode. You've got a very strong understanding of how the structure works. I don't want to come across as like one of those socialists at a Ben Shapiro seminar saying about the pencil factory. Did you see that soundbite? That's not what I'm about. I'm a capitalist. I'm a gym owner. I want money. I want cash. But at the same time,
I'm all about capitalism.
When I hear
I'm
things,
just not very good at it.
Yeah, for real. But when I hear things like the gate is $7 million, when I hear things like the pay-per-view buys are off the charts, and when I see things like, there's so many variables, but if I'm an up-and-comer and I've paid my dues in the lower leagues and I get summoned to the UFC and now I'm making $10,000 to fight and $10,000 to win, I get $20,000, which sounds wonderful if it's $20,000 cash into my pocket, but it's not. And it's a huge pay cut if I'm good at my own promotion, if I'm good at my social media, if I'm good at advertising. It just seems like the fighters do get the wrong end of the stick and everyone else is paid accordingly. Now, again, I would agree with what you're saying in that the fighters are paid accordingly. I think it just could be a little bit more. Get them off the baseline of the breadline, I think they call it.
Well, honestly, the thing is when you look, let's say worst case scenario, you lose your 3 fights, right? You're probably not going to be in the UFC for much longer, so their pay is not going to be an issue for you.
Yeah.
But you've made 30 grand that year. I would ask how many other people get by on 30,000 a year, and it's a lot. Mm-hmm. It is a lot. Not every UFC fighter is going to be a megastar, and that is the risk, right? Because the problem is, it is the hurt business. It's the same with any of these sports. It's not exclusive to mixed martial arts. Maybe the toll on the body might be slightly more extreme than, say, like you've got soccer in England, right? So, the amount of Premier League players that go bankrupt within 5 years or so. I can't remember what the stat was, but they go bankrupt within 5 years.
Wow.
Because they don't make allowances for the fact that they're not at retirement age. They're 35. I'm 35. I mean, I'm never going to retire. It's just not. Is it like? But like state pensions, that they don't cover enough to live on. Do you know what I mean? Like my private pension probably isn't going to be worth dick by the time I get to retirement age. No, I will be working until I'm in a pine box, and that is what is going to happen. If I can make my podcast take off, that would be incredible, because at least then I'll be doing something that I love, right? And again, that's something. But the biggest risk in fighting is, look, you don't make any money from it, and you end up being a nobody, just still. But you had a crack at it, right?
Yeah.
And you got paid your money. It wasn't enough to retire on, so you might have to get a regular job. I get it. It sucks. Nobody wants to work a regular job. I hate working a regular job. It sucks, right? But the reward is potentially you could retire at the age of 35, 36 and have a job in broadcasting and, do you know what I mean? And have enough left over that you've invested in, to make your money into more money. And that's what the smart guys do. That's what Conor McGregor did. It's why McGregor doesn't have to worry about money anymore, because he actually invested it very smartly. He turned his money into more money, right? And what I'm saying is that there are some fighters that can do that, but like the world doesn't owe you a living, and neither does the UFC. Like if you can show that you're going to bring in enough revenue to the UFC, they will look after you. Like they pay out bonuses all the time that are undisclosed.
Yeah.
Because they're like, that brought more eyes to our product, which is going to help us sell more stuff in the future. I'm going to look after this guy. Unfortunately, the whole kind of premise, it's not dissimilar to being sales. If you're in sales and you're a bad salesman, you get paid next to fuck all, right? That is life. It's life in general, unfortunately, because at the crux of it, do I think that fighters should get paid more? Yeah, because I think everyone should get paid more. Like, honestly, I think that honestly, the system that we have at the moment, where like 99% of the wealth is in the hands of like 1% or something. It's something stupid like that, isn't it? I've seen the memes or whatever, but I don't know how true that statement is, but I know that it's in that kind of ballpark, isn't it? Basically, like I personally think that needs to shift slightly. Yeah, I think that a lot of people that earn 30 grand a year, like I don't live comfortably. Do you know what I mean? It's like I live paycheck to paycheck, more or less, and that is the situation that a lot of people are in. But I do things in my spare time to try and, at least do something that I want to be doing. And it's the same with fighters. You're going out there and initially, like BJJ fighting, it's a hobby, right? But if you can make money out of that hobby, brilliant. If you can get to the good leagues, even better. Maybe you can even then roll the dice on becoming like a multimillionaire. But it's definitely not going to happen for everybody. And if it did, then everyone would do it.
True. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I agree with all that.
It's a risky business.
True. So let's look at the blueprint of how to combat if you're not on. I think I'm playing devil's advocate, but I think I'm on your side of thinking here. Not a socialist. I think you're nail on the head on all points. Let's look at the blueprint to combat those terms. The low pay scale at the beginning, the fact that you don't have control of your sponsorship to a certain degree. How do you push from there?
Bellator needs to pay better.
Yeah, that's your point.
Oh, I'm serious. Like,
I'm looking at
if Bellator raised their minimum rates, then the UFC would have to. Yeah. They're not being funny, but their entry prelim fighters make 10 grand a fight less than the UFC counterparts. Yeah, and people call it like the second organization. It's third behind ONE FC. Everyone knows FC. That.
All right.
To be fair, the UFC is probably second to ONE FC. Like in Asia. Now, when you look at the viewing figures, it's mental.
But let's look at the. I have not.
Like, because obviously there's a lot of people in Asia and they love martial arts. Yeah. And like the viewing figures that like in Asia, like it's like, what's the UFC? You mean ONE FC? It's like, no, UFC. No. We have ONE FC is the premier organization. I'm pretty sure that is the case. So they might well pay better, but they don't disclose their salaries. So it's difficult to say when they say,
if they don't disclose, maybe it's shite. Maybe they pay an exposure.
Yeah, it might be.
There you go.
You never know.
But what we're seeing now is a combat to that way of doing business, right? No longer are these guys just airhead or knuckleheads who just want to go in and fight. Like Mike Tyson said, I think he quoted, "These guys are businessmen. I wanted to go in and kill these motherfuckers." Mr. Sugar Sean O'Malley, he's doing something that no other fighter is, and I don't know if he's
getting just tattoos of pedophiles.
Exactly. What's that guy's Tekashi 6ix9ine, the snitch?
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. But I don't know if he's just a very intelligent guy or if he's getting a lot of good information from good people. But he went ahead and signed. Was he on The Ultimate Fighter, or was it the Looking for a Fight, or what? How was he recognized?
It was the Contender Series.
The Contender Series. So he signed his initial contract with the UFC. Like every fighter does, they try and get famous quick. But if you get very famous very quick, you are on your initial contract. So let's say you go in and knock your first guy out in the first round. People start to, who's this guy? Social media grows. Second fight. It's that guy from the first fight. Knocks that guy out too. Then they start talking about a title shot or a contender fight or whatever. They get to the third fight. They're fighting a big name and they're still on their initial contract. So they're probably getting $16,000. Well, Sugar Sean O'Malley is refusing and has refused to fight big named fighters because he's on his initial contract.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
Fantastic patience, great guidance, wonderful to see. And now what's happening is, what was his last fight? Was it a knockout? TKO?
His last fight?
It was recently.
Who was it? He did. I'm sure he knocked him out as well.
Case in point.
No,
nobody.
No, he didn't knock him out. He got it went to a decision. No, wait, no, it got stopped. It got stopped in round number 3 because remember it was Chris Martinho and he was just like a zombie. He just kept walking straight forward.
Yeah.
And the referee stopped it when he could have just like carried on. But it was still an impressive performance. It was still like a standout performance.
Yeah, and case in point, we don't know who that guy's name is.
Chris Martinho.
Yeah, I didn't. You did because you're fucking torpedoing me all night, bro. But he's at the, he's on his podcast. He's probably very well sponsored on his podcast. He's at the press conference. He's trash talking Cody Garbrandt.
Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah. He's playing it to the guidebook of how you do this contractually. Refuse to fight ranked fighters until you are towards the end of your initial contract. Then you say, right, look at my social media, look what I bring to the table. Now I'd like to fight a ranked fighter and this is the amount of money that I'm willing to do it for. So he's sticking to his guns, betting on himself, and I like what he's doing. I think more and more fighters are going to do that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that approach. I really do.
It's smart.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's and again, it's like Sean O'Malley is somebody that's marketed himself really, really well. He's on Twitch. He's doing all of that stuff, and he's doing it so much better than most people, to be perfectly honest.
Yep, agreed.
And fair play to him. I'm actually quite a big fan of Sean O'Malley, not just because his fighting style is brilliant. I love watching him fight, but I kind of like him. Like, crap tattoos aside, I do like what he does. I just think he's very, very clever. And he knows, he's recognized the rules of the game and he's playing it. And to a certain extent, like the very, very successful people do that. You know what I mean? They recognize the rules of the game. They take a look at the rules and how are you successful within this rule set? It's how Donald Trump became president. That's how he did it.
There you go.
People can bitch and complain all they like. People are mad because he won. You know what I mean? He looked at it like this thing is a contest. You know what I mean? And I can. Who the hell is that?
Is it backwards? Let's Go Brandon. Do you know what Let's Go Brandon is?
Who's Brandon?
You don't know who Let's Go Brandon is?
No.
Oh, bro, this is where I'm going to get cancelled on my podcast. So there was some, was it NASCAR or Formula One thing in the US a couple of months ago, and everyone in the crowd were going, "Fuck Joe Biden."
Nice.
Like this, and they were interviewing some guy called Brandon, and the interviewer was like, and as you can hear, the crowd are going, "Let's go Brandon." So the Republican Party in the US started running with "Let's go Brandon" as a caveat to
love that
what they were saying. And obviously I'm a huge fan of US politics, so I went out and bought the t-shirt, bro. Let's go cool. Brandon.
I like that. I'm gonna have to look at I missed that, but
I'll send you the link.
It's the same thing. It's what Dana White did. You know, Dana White and the Fertitas, they recognised the rules of the game they are playing, and they took all the risks, and now they get a bulk of the money. And there is nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. People
absolutely not. That's capitalism 101.
People forget very quickly that the risks that Dana White and the Fertitas took, because like people always talk about, who's looking after these fighters, after they retire and that. It's like, who would be looking after? Would they be looking after Dana White if he was working in a hotel somewhere? If the Fertitas and himself ended up $4 million in the hole, if the Ultimate Fighter never took off, so they owe as much to them as those fighters would owe to them if the shoe was on the other foot. And honestly, none of those fighters would give a shit about them. They wouldn't. Mm-hmm. Why would you?
True.
It's not. There are only so many fucks you can give. You can't just give them out.
That's the reality of life, right?
Yeah, it's true. There's only so much energy you can have. There's only so much you can care about people to an extent, but you can't care about everyone. You just can't. Yeah. And at a certain point, it's like, I can't remember if I said it on take 2 or on the earlier take, but it's like, Chris Rock had that thing where he said, when I was, driving to gigs and stuff, my car used to break down, and I'd stand next to my car and no one would pull over and help me. And I'd start pushing my car and people would pull over and help me push my car. So help yourself. People will help you. But if you just stand there and go, oh, you know, I'm an ex-fighter and I did this. Thing is, as I was saying with the Mark Coleman thing, like I'm fairly sure there are things that he can do for money that, like, say, because like those kind of things, like arthritis, all those things are not exclusive to fighting. You look at a labourer, someone's been a labourer on a building site. I was a labourer, you know, I fit windows. I've done all sorts on building sites. It's hard fucking work, and you can hurt yourself very easily on a building site, very, very easily, right? And if your back goes, if your knees go, whatever, and you can't carry on working, do you think they could start a podcast and get, you know, 100,000 views instantly? Mark Coleman can.
Yeah, for real.
He can do it easily. Like, so let's not get our small violins out just yet, is what I'm saying. You know, people can help themselves. Mark Coleman certainly can. He's a big boy. He can take care of himself.
To quote Dana White on that as well, he said recently, actually within the last year, this is not a career. This is an opportunity.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to that, because as we like touched on, they're independent contractors. Now, there's some very strongly legalized wording of those contracts because they can't go and fight for other organizations. They're not employees. They don't enjoy the benefits of an employee, whether you retire or your contract expires or anything like that. You're not entitled to anything simply because you signed the contract and agreed to it. But yes, it is an opportunity. It's not a career. People mix that up, you know. And again, like you say, and you're correct in what you're saying, life owes you nothing. You know, you're not owed anything. And if you, again, it's contractual. You sign the contract. And when we bitch about fighter pay, there's so many variables. I agree with everything that you're saying. It does hurt when there's gates of $7 million and the fighters don't see a penny. It sucks when 2 million people purchase the pay-per-view that recently increased in price by $5 and the fighters don't see a penny. But again, contractual. They signed the contract. They agreed to the terms. Then it was good. Then it was good now. They agreed to that money. You could not agree. No one's forcing you to sign the paper.
Yeah, you could do a Michael Chandler. Like, because the thing is, again, like that's another thing. People always seem to think that, Bellator pay their big fighters better. No, they don't. Ask Michael Chandler what he made in Bellator. Ask him what he makes now.
What do you mean by that? I don't know. What's that?
His contract is way bigger in the UFC. Almost twice, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I can't remember what the figure was, but I was surprised because I was expecting, I checked it. I can't remember what the figures are off the top of my head, but I was expecting to see him making more in Bellator because they always threw loads of money at their top, handful of fighters. And I was very shocked to see that I'm fairly sure he's on at least 100,000 more a fight in the UFC.
Wow. Which
is a lot, you know?
Yeah.
But that's because Michael Chandler, he put together a body of work that was kind of undeniable. You know, I dare say, because Paddy Pimblett, he decided that he wanted to have another couple of fights under like Cage Warriors because he was making more money in Cage Warriors. But there's been nobody in Cage Warriors like Paddy Pimblett. Do you know what I mean? Even like Conor McGregor left before he could become that in Cage Warriors. Do you know what I mean? He left. Yeah. Like Paddy Pimblett stayed and he's selling out the Echo Arena, lad. It's like, there are very few fighters that could do that. So Cage Warriors could pay him pretty well. And he's made no secret that his contract in Cage Warriors was better than the one that he's entered into on the UFC. But I dare say if Paddy Pimblett had gone over to Bellator rather than Cage Warriors and done successfully in there, he could have done a Michael Chandler and he'd probably be going in on an entry-level contract. But he's already put in the work and he's made himself undeniable. But it's just the whole contract thing is about what you bring to the table, isn't it? You know, the UFC are looking to because that's why they're independent contractors. Because obviously, it does suck that they're independent contractors, but they can't independently contract for somebody else. But the problem is, it's not the same as any other kind of business, is it? It's not like it's not like you're making money from your plumber doing your pipes. That's what she said. So,
oh, that is what she said, bro.
But yeah, you've got someone installing a window. You're not making money off of people looking at that, right? The UFC are making money their brand is heavily contingent on those eyes looking at you. So therefore they can't have you going and doing that plumbing work for someone else.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't even know what the UFC's plumbers makes. You know, I'm sure it's a lot.
Most likely. But what you said,
I hear their plumbing is top notch.
What you said there to I guess transition over to tonight's fights. It's Tuesday, but it's posted on Saturday. Cyril Gane versus Francis Ngannou, highly politicized fight over many different factors. You've got Francis Ngannou, who's unhappy with the UFC, who has been outed by Dana White as a diva with diva demands since he became a more publicized figure of the UFC and a heavyweight champion. Upset that Mr. Jake Paul is making all those millions while he's stuck on a 500,000 purse. And to be at the end of your contract, and this is the championship clause that comes into effect. Mm-hmm. This is the last fight that's on Francis Ngannou's contract. As the champion, if he wins, he gets the contract extended to another fight, or one or fight or 3 fights, or at least 1 year. And he's expressed interest to fight Tyson Fury.
It's like, it's something like 1 year, something like that. But
something like that, yeah.
Yes.
So he's just unhappy with his purse.
That is one disadvantage of going for a championship fight, I guess. I mean, the one of the pros is that he gets pay-per-view. You know what I mean? Yeah. If he, as the champion, he gets pay-per-view points. And that's one of the pros. So the problem is he signed that contract when he thought he needed it. And that's like, but it's fine. I don't need that contract anymore, so I would like a different one. That's not how it works. Yeah. And what if he'd have lost all those fights? Well, it's like the UFC would still pay him what he was contracted. But the problem I've got with Francis, the way he's handled it, I don't think it's a problem with Francis and how he's handled it. I honestly think he has some bad people around him that are giving him some really bad advice. I certainly think he's got some people around him that are spending his money for him. Honestly, because look, the dude's made if you include bonuses and things like that, I don't know what the exact figure is, but if he's on 500 grand a fight, he's had like 5 fights in the last 2 years. Yeah, so he's on at least 2.5 million base, and let's not forget he's probably gotten a couple of knockouts in the night here and there as well, and not forgetting that he's now he's got Vegas billboards up everywhere. He's making money off of those. He's making money off appearances. Like, he's making like millions now, right? How has he got nothing left to buy a fight camp with?
Yeah.
Who's spending his money? I think people need to stop looking at Dana White. Dana White doesn't have anything to do with that. Do you know what I mean? Dana White pays what he agrees to pay them.
Yeah.
Whether it's for better or worse, he pays often above what they're contractually obliged to get. If you talk to a lot of fighters say, their bonuses coming left, right, and center. But I think Ngannou, honestly, I think he's got some bad management. I think that there are some people giving him some terrible advice, because the problem is he's now putting himself into a situation where it's like, okay, you want to be difficult? We can be difficult. You know, I don't think Francis Ngannou is not unbeatable. We've already seen that. He's a few losses away from just being like, yeah, okay, see ya. Have fun in Bellator. Have your boxing match against Tyson Fury. It's fine. Yeah, he will make a lot of money off of the boxing match with Tyson Fury. He won't win it. He won't come anywhere close. Ridiculous. The notion is ridiculous.
He'll get murdered.
People that are entertaining, like, honestly, I don't think that Francis Ngannou does very well against any top 15, maybe even top 20 heavyweight boxer.
Yeah, he'll get out-jabbed in the first round and he'll gas for sure. Ngannou, he's fun to watch, right? Because he's just got that big power. But he's off balance all the time. This is where he's going to come into problems with Cyril Gane, honestly. I mean, obviously, he can put your lights out, like, if he touches you. And that is fun. That's one of the things I love to watch in him. But from a technical perspective, there must be a lot of like kind of professional like coaches
that watch what he does, and they're like, oh, what is that? What are you doing? Oh, fundamentals.
Oh yeah.
Remember your footwork, Francis. Oh, Francis.
Yeah, there's this video edited together where he's with Mike Tyson, and Mike is showing him the right uppercut to the body, right uppercut, and then it cuts to the fight, and his hands are coming from over here, and he's yeah. But again, to quote the great Brendan Schaub, fighters, man, you're not dealing with the smartest tools in the shed.
No, you're not. And and honestly, I do think that Ngannou has been getting some bad advice. I don't think it's necessarily him. Maybe it is, but it's not like he's been, because I've seen his Instagram. He's driving a new Ferrari every day. He is living it up, as he should. But don't then go publicly and say, oh, the UFC don't pay me enough because look, I'm having to borrow money to get my next fight camp. That says way more about you than it does about the UFC, my friend.
That's a great impression as well, by the way.
Sorry?
That's a great impression of Francis, by the way.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's like, look, come on, man. If you can't take a few $1 million, right, and budget and leave yourself with enough left over to pay for a fight camp, that is a you problem. That is not a UFC problem. Dana White didn't spend your money for you. He paid you what he was contracted to pay you. And if you can't budget, that is on you. Hire an accountant to tell you because I think that a lot of people, I think he's probably surrounded himself with a lot of yes men, honestly, just tell him yes all the time. But what he needs is a smart accountant to say to him, look, you can't keep living like this. You're going to run out of money. Have you booked another fight yet? No. So, well, book one. You need to pay for this lavish lifestyle that you're living. Do you know what I mean? It's why so many sports stars run out of money, because they just they get a taste of it, and then they start spending quicker than it comes in. And
I know that you're a huge fan of NFL,
and that's just a rule of thumb for life. You know what I mean?
I know you're a huge fan of NFL, and I did read an article about, I was 5 or 6 months ago now, where all the new guys come in out of college and they sign these huge $5 million deals, and within 2 years they're all broke.
Yeah, they spend it on sneakers.
Yeah. Insane, you know.
And like I said, I think that's less a problem with the UFC than it is with just what money can do to people in general. You know, it's like I said, I'm not made of stone. Do I think that all people should probably get a bigger piece of the pie than we all currently get? I don't think it's a problem exclusive to fighters, like taxes. Unfortunately, taxes, that's not a problem exclusive to fighters. Everyone has to pay taxes. You know what I mean? Like, my wages don't get given to me after tax. I don't get paid this and that's tax already taken off. No, everybody gets their tax taken off. And that's just a fact of life. You know, it just is what it is. And the tax isn't as bad as a lot of people make it out to be as well. A lot of people go, oh, he loses 50% of his purse in tax. You're talking shit.
I love your impressions, man.
The Vegas tax rate is 24% plus 6% state tax.
Yeah.
And that's 31%. That's not 50%. Don't get me wrong. I would rather not have 31% of my fight purse taken away, but honestly, I'd rather that 20% of my wage doesn't get taken away from me every month. You know?
Yeah.
So it is what it is. That's not a UFC problem. That's like, if you got a problem with that and you're having to go at the UFC, you're having to go at the wrong people, is what I would say in my closing kind of argument. Is that a lot of the time when people make this debate, number one, they don't know what they're talking about, because quite frankly, look, I read a lot into this and I do try and consider all options, and I don't even know what I'm talking about. And I acknowledge that readily. You know, at the end of the day, when people say, do you think fighters get underpaid? I'm like, no, I don't know. And that's the thing. Most people, like a vast majority of the comments you see in comment sections, will jump to the conclusion that Dana White is robbing the fighters, that they underpay them. And all I would do to counter that is say, we don't know. Unless you are the UFC's accountant, you have no fucking idea whether they're underpaid, overpaid, And you got to look at all the other factors, like the amount that UFC like invest in advertising, growth to try and grow the sport. They bring those Venom deals in, the Reebok deals, because they're trying to get on ESPN. Because, like I said, the sport has come such a long way in a very short amount of time, and there's got to be a lot of credit for that given to the UFC, and they don't do that without investing money into all those avenues. That doesn't happen for free, and. Yeah. The percentages, honestly, they're probably on a razor. They probably have very clever people looking at what they can afford to percentage-wise out of their revenue to give out to the fighters, to pay the cameramen, to pay the editors, to pay the production, to pay into growth, to fund the embedded series, to fund the contender series, to fund this, to fund that, to
fund Dana White's gambling problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's just like that's a whole separate account. But yeah, my point is that look, they've probably got some really smart people looking at it, and way smarter than me, way smarter than any idiot in a comments section, certainly. And whilst, like I said, like my stance on it is, like I think it's far more likely, the more likely scenario than Dana White robbing all the fighters. Far more likely is they get paid exactly what they should get paid based on the margins that the UFC has. Yeah. And maybe it's slightly favorable to the UFC, but those guys writing the contract are getting paid a lot of money to do so. So they better be writing favorable contracts. Same as Dana White. Dana White better be getting the best deal for the UFC, because you see what he gets paid? It's like $300 million a year or something like that. Something by ridiculous. WME. Yeah, by WME, he gets paid like a ridiculous amount to get favorable deals for the UFC. And if he's not doing that, then he's not the right man for the job. But lucky for him, he is.
There you go, man. So, what do you think, outside of fighter pay, what do you think is going to happen at the weekend with the fights?
Tonight.
Yeah, tonight. There you go. What do you think is going to be... let's just look at the main event, because I'm going to break down the card anyway sometime during the week. Cool. But Cyril Gane versus Francis Ngannou. Like, Cyril is the Francis is the favorite, I believe, right? Am I wrong on that? I'm not sure. I don't know the odds. You're the guy.
Have to check that.
You're the guy for the odds. There was sparring footage came out. It was complete and utter nonsense. I don't even want to talk about it because it was bollocks. But obviously, it's going to be an exciting fight regardless. My opinion, I don't have an opinion. I just want to see a good fight. I don't even want to give a guess. If it's going to be a knockout, it's going to be early. It's going to be Francis.
I would say that there is a chance of of a later round knockout, or just a pure exhaustion TKO.
Right.
Because this is the way. By the way, guys, if you know my betting history, you know to bet on the opposite of what I'm about to say. For me, I just feel like, unless we see a far sharper, because I get it, he was more patient against Stipe the second time, but he still wasn't like, it wasn't a changed Francis Ngannou really. I don't see, outside of catching Gane with something, I don't see how Francis wins this one. I really don't. But based on what we see Francis come in and do, because the problem is, like, I get it, he can be more patient, but even when he fought Stipe the second time, it's not like he tidied up all of his technique. He was still off balance when he was throwing. And the way Stipe beat him the first time, I do think that Stipe lost a step as well, honestly. Between their first and second fights, I do think that Stipe lost just a step. And just a step is just enough to catch one of those bombs off of Francis Ngannou, because I'm not ignorant to the fact that obviously Francis, if he catches you, your lights are going out. Do I think that Cyril Gane's going to get caught? I don't think he is. I just think that I think he's too fast, right? He puts a real fright into people. You can see it on their face when, like, you saw it with Volkov, right? Volkov is a devastating striker. He had the reach, right? He's an excellent striker who had the reach, but every time he was throwing at Cyril Gane, the first couple of rounds, he was hitting nothing but air. And you saw the look on his face change to, right, okay, that was about as quick as I can throw a punch. And he just looked at me like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And it's just like, and that's scary. That can put a real scare into people. And it stopped. And And the thing is with Volkov, he was getting countered so often that it actually made him hesitant to throw. And again, I don't want to say he did the same thing to Derek Lewis. I don't think that was the right Derek Lewis in there, honestly. I think Derek Lewis beat himself mentally before he even stepped in there. But you still can't take anything away from Cyril Gane. He still put on like a flawless performance, really. But what I would say is that from a striking perspective, I do think that Cyril Gane is probably sharper than the Stipe Miocic that fought Francis the first time. From a purely technical perspective, speed, like reactions, how elusive he is. I think that Stipe was a phenomenal fighter then and now. Got nothing but respect for Stipe. But on a pure striking perspective, I think that Cyril Gane's probably better than he was in that fight. And the reason that Stipe beat Francis in that first fight was not because of the wrestling. The wrestling happened in spite of everything that happened, right? Because the reason he tired Francis Ngannou out is he made him miss. Because Francis Ngannou loads up on his punches. And when he misses, he doesn't just use all that energy throwing it out. He has to drag it back in. And that's a big old arm, a big old shoulder to pull back into place. You do that more than a few times, and that's when he started breathing heavy. And that's when he was easy to take down, because you saw that Stipe tried to get a takedown when Francis wasn't tired enough in the second fight, and he just shrugged it off like it was nothing. But when Francis is tired, he will let you do whatever you want. And I think that's probably what is going to happen here. I think that Francis will throw and he will miss. And Cyril Gane is just going to be too fast. He's going to be in and out. He's not going to be where Ngannou's fist is after it's been thrown. Honestly, I think that Gane has probably fought faster people than Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou's got a lot of power and he's fast enough, but I don't think he's fast enough to catch Cyril Gane. And that is my pick. I think that Cyril Gane is going to get a late round TKO. Round 4 or 5, it's going to be Cyril Gane basically shoving him over because he's so exhausted that he can't even stand up into his own power anymore.
And new.
Yeah, and new. So what you should do, guys, is bet on a first round KO for Francis Ngannou, because my bets and my predictions are terrible. But that's honestly, when I look at both fighters, I do like both of them. I sound like I'm a massive Francis Ngannou hater. I'm really not. I love watching the guy fight, and he's so much fun. But I cannot pretend that I don't see the glaring problems in his technical kind of ability. There's a reason his coach didn't push him to be a heavyweight boxer. Yeah, there is a reason for that. Honestly, it's like, because he was like, your striking's more than good enough for MMA. Head into that, mate. You know what I mean? We'll
see, man. I'm looking forward to watching it, though. It's an exciting heavyweight, no matter what the sport, heavyweight jiu-jitsu, heavyweight boxing, heavyweight MMA.
It's just more fun, isn't it?
It's so much fun to see these two fucking testosterone monsters get in there and just fight. Very excited, man. I love talking fights with you. It's an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you? What are you doing? Where are you?
Well, I am the Burt Locker on YouTube. And basically I put out 2 shows a week. I do my midweek wrap-up show, and I do my fight picks on a Friday. The fight picks are always on the Patreon first, so you can get your fight picks in on a Friday. And they're just fun bets, really. Like I said, I always say, like, if you're trying to get rich betting on MMA, you need a lot of capital, and you need to bet on the favorite every time. And don't bet on variables. I bet on all the variables. I basically don't take that advice. I bet on all the variables. I basically put down bets that are more or less impossible to actually come off, but I keep those stakes low, and they're a bit of fun. It's fun betting. You know, I often laugh at myself, because if you can't laugh at yourself, you know what I mean? And one of the most fun things actually is breaking down how wrong all my bets went, like on the Wednesday. That's some of the things that I get the most laughs out of, because I'm just like, well, yeah, you know, that was a shit take on that fight, wasn't it? But yeah.
It's like Chael Sonnen. He does the curse of Chael, where he gets all the predictions wrong.
I do have a similar curse, it seems, but it's just like I said, and you know, I watch a lot of fights. It's like, you know, I don't want to say I know what I'm talking about, but I do. I've been watching MMA a long time. I do spot things. I do have some kind of insight, be it a good one. That remains to be seen. But yeah, so that's all on YouTube. I am the Burt Locker on Patreon as well. There is, like I said, the early access to the picks on Patreon. There is going to be more content coming onto the Patreon soon, but it's just a very nice way for people to show their support, because it's like literally £1 a month. It's a flat fee, and it's like it's buying me like a can of Coke every month. You'd do that, wouldn't you?
Man, Coke every month for me is
delicious. Diabetes in a can.
There you go.
Wonderful.
And if you're a fan of my podcast, like, share, subscribe, rate, review, Spotify, Apple Podcasts or iTunes. What should I say there? I always get the two mixed up. They're the same fucking thing.
Yeah, I'm on Anchor. The audio one is on Anchor, so that goes out to Spotify and everything.
Yeah,
and I have 3 listens a week on that one. And they're all from Dallas for some reason.
There you go. Dallas. So, I've got 2 fans in Pakistan, bro. I've got to keep my, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to keep them going.
Keep them going. There you go. Burt, I love talking fights with you, man. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me.
It's been my pleasure.
So basically what you're saying is Dana White's a scumbag and he needs to give away all his money. That's what I got from this.
In an ideal world, yeah. In an ideal world, not just Dana White, but literally all of the billionaires would just, because you could wipe out world hunger, you could wipe out homelessness if every billionaire went down to a single billion, you could end poverty.
Oh yeah.
End it. Right? And so, Dana, the rest of you guys, step up.
There's a reason Jeff Bezos went to space during a pandemic, bro.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
There you go, man. Jesus. Frog in my throat. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Burt, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me again, man.
Thank you very much. Been a pleasure.
Till the next time.